What a day at the Emirates, folks. We've just witnessed one of those classic Premier League performances where tactical discipline and defensive resilience trumped possession and territorial dominance. West Ham have pulled off something quite remarkable here, walking away with all 3 points after a masterclass in defensive organization. Let's break down how this match unfolded, because there's so much to unpack. Arsenal came into this one with that 15-game unbeaten streak in the Premier League, their best run since that 2010-2011 season when they went 16 games without defeat. There was this real sense of momentum building, but West Ham had other ideas. The fascinating tactical battle started right from the opening minutes. Arsenal's decision to deploy Marino as a center forward was, well, let's call it what it was. A gamble that didn't quite pay off. In those first 20 minutes, you could see the disconnect between Marino and his supporting cast. Trossard, Nwaneri, and Odegaard were all trying to figure out their teammates' movement patterns. But it was like watching a band playing together for the first time. The rhythm just wasn't there. West Ham's five-man defensive setup deserves its own chapter in defensive coaching manuals. They weren't just parking the bus. They were orchestrating a defensive symphony. The way they maintained their shape while still managing to spring counterattacks was absolutely brilliant. And speaking of counterattacks, let's talk about that goal. Just before halftime, when Bowen picked up that ball near his own penalty area, this is where football tactics meet perfect execution. The movement, the timing, Wan-Bissaka's run down the flank, it was like watching a perfectly choreographed dance. That cross to the penalty spot was inch perfect, and Bowen's finish, chef's kiss. The way he got ahead of both Gabriel and Saliba, that's what you call striker's instinct. The XG numbers at halftime told their own story, West Ham leading with 1.17 to Arsenal's 0.49. But here's the kicker. 87% of West Ham's XG came from that Bowen goal. This wasn't a case of the visitors peppering Arsenal's goal. This was clinical, efficient football. The kind of away performance that managers dream about. The real story of the first half wasn't just about that goal, though. It was about how West Ham managed to neutralize Arsenal's usually fluid midfield. Despite Arsenal looking comfortable in possession, they were being forced into areas where they couldn't hurt West Ham. It was like watching a boxer with a longer reach, keeping their opponent at arm's length. Technically impressive, but ultimately frustrating for the attacking side. I need to specifically highlight Kudus here. Those little touches to escape the press, the way he was linking play. He was playing like a man who had the pitch mapped out in his head before he even received the ball. In a game where space was at a premium, he was finding pockets that shouldn't have existed. This first half really set the template for what was to come. Arsenal, for all their possession and technical quality, were running into a wall. And not just any wall. A well-organized, disciplined, and tactically astute West Ham side that had clearly done their homework. The second half began with Arsenal needing to find answers, but West Ham nearly doubled their lead in the 56th minute. That Cresswell cross for Bowen, it was one of those moments where everyone in the stadium held their breath. If Bowen gets any contact there, it's 2-0 and probably game over. The margins in football, folks, the absolute margins. What's really interesting about this match is how it started to mirror a classic tactical problem. How do you break down a well-organized defense that's perfectly happy to sit deep and counter? Arsenal's response came through Odegaard trying to orchestrate quick switches of play. That moment in the 64th minute was particularly telling. The switch to Lewis-Skelly, that clever backheel to Trossard, it was like watching a locksmith trying different keys. But Areola's save with his foot? That's the kind of goalkeeping that wins you points. Let's talk about the defensive masterclass West Ham put on. In previous weeks, they'd looked shaky at the back, vulnerable even. But today, it was like watching a different team. The coordination, the positioning, the way they were always there to sweep up any danger, it was remarkable. When one defender was beaten, another was instantly there to cover. It's the kind of defensive performance that coaches will be showing in training sessions for weeks to come. But the real turning point came at the 70-minute mark. Lewis-Skelly's last-man tackle on Kudus. Now that's the kind of moment that changes games. Initially, no red card, but VAR got it right. Let's break this down. Kudus threw on goal, Raya way out of his position, and Lewis-Skelly makes that desperate tackle. It's his second red card in a month, and you can't really argue with it. Kudus would have been clean through, and with Raya's positioning, it would have been a simple lift over the keeper. Now, this is where the tactical intrigue really deepens. Arsenal, already a goal down, now down to 10 men and without a recognized center forward. It's the kind of scenario that tests not just a team's ability, but their problem-solving skills, their character, their tactical flexibility. For Arteta, it was a nightmare situation. How do you chase a game with 10 men against a team that's already defending superbly? Kudus really deserves a special mention here. The way he was bullying Gabriel, a defender who's usually so dominant in physical battles, was something to behold. That moment in the 75th minute when he just muscled Gabriel off the ball, that's the kind of strength and skill combination that makes defenders have sleepless nights. Both Arsenal center halves found him absolutely unplayable today. West Ham's game management after the red card was textbook stuff. The way they kept possession in midfield, forcing Arsenal to chase shadows, it was like watching a cat play with its food. Despite having 0 XG since the restart, they didn't need it. They'd done their damage in the first half, and now it was all about game management. The final 20 minutes were a masterclass in game management from West Ham, but also a stark revelation of Arsenal's limitations when forced to chase a game. That 85th minute sequence tells you everything you need to know about Arsenal's desperation. You've got Odegaard and Trossard taking ages to set up a free kick, probably overthinking it, and then Sterling hits it straight into the wall. When the ball falls to Gabriel in space, and this is a chance, a real chance, he leans back and skies it. It's the kind of opportunity that haunts you when you're analyzing the game later. The fascinating thing about West Ham's defensive setup was how they seemed to multiply in number when Arsenal had the ball. Every time an Arsenal player looked up, they were faced with this impenetrable wall. The defensive coordination was something else. One player steps out, another drops in, like they were connected by invisible strings. In the 88th minute, you could see the frustration building in Arsenal's play. They had the ball, sure, but what do you do with it when every passing lane looks like it's been preemptively blocked? Kudus deserves his own chapter in this story. The way he was playing against Arsenal's center backs was like watching a seasoned boxer work the body. Constant pressure, never letting them settle, always making them think. Even when Partey made that well-timed sliding challenge in the 90th minute, you could sense the respect Arsenal's players had developed for him. They weren't just marking him anymore. They were worried about him. Let's talk about those final minutes, because they really encapsulate Arsenal's struggles. You're watching a team that's usually so precise, so methodical in their build-up play, reduced to throwing crosses into the box and hoping something sticks. The statistics tell the story. Cresswell and Kilman with 8 clearances each, Wan-Bissaka with 5. These aren't just numbers, they're evidence of West Ham's defensive superiority. 20 shots for Arsenal, but only 2 on target. That's the kind of statistic that keeps managers awake at night. It's not just about creating chances, it's about creating quality chances. Arsenal's XG might have been higher than West Ham's by the end, but that doesn't tell the whole story. West Ham had done what they needed to do early, and they managed the game perfectly from there. The impact of this result can't be understated. 8 points off the pace now for Arsenal. In the Premier League, that's starting to look like a mountain to climb. It's not just the points gap, it's the psychological impact. This was a game they needed to win to keep pressure on Liverpool, and instead, they've handed the initiative firmly to their rivals. For West Ham, this wasn't just 3 points. This was a statement. This was a team showing they can go to one of the most difficult grounds in the Premier League, set up defensively, execute their game plan perfectly, and come away with a win. The way they defended, the way they countered, the way they managed the game, it was like watching a masterclass in how to play away from home against a top side. What we witnessed today at the Emirates wasn't just a West Ham victory. It was a tactical masterpiece that will be studied and analyzed for weeks to come. Potter's men didn't just defend. They defended with purpose, with organization, and most importantly, with unwavering belief in their game plan. The way they maintained their shape while still posing a threat on the counter was nothing short of remarkable. For Arsenal, this has to be a moment of serious reflection. The question isn't just about dropping points, it's about their ability to break down organized defenses when plan A isn't working. That lack of a recognized center forward after Marino's struggles and the red card to Lewis-Skelly exposed a vulnerability that top teams will have noted. The way they resorted to hopeful crosses in the dying minutes showed a team running out of ideas. Let's give credit where it's due, though. Bowen's goal was a moment of pure Premier League quality: the run, the timing, the finish. But it was Kudus who really stole the show. The way he dominated his individual battles, created space in tight areas, and constantly kept Arsenal's defense guessing was a joy to watch. He didn't just play well, he played with the kind of authority that makes you sit up and take notice. This result might just be a pivotal moment in the title race. Arsenal now find themselves 8 points off the pace, and in a league where margins are so tight, that's a gap that looks increasingly difficult to bridge. For West Ham, this victory isn't just about the 3 points. It's about proving they can go toe-to-toe with the best and come out on top. As we close the book on this match, it's worth remembering that these are the kinds of games that shape seasons. For West Ham, it's a template of how to execute a perfect away performance. For Arsenal, it's a harsh lesson in the importance of having multiple ways to break down a determined defense. The Premier League never fails to deliver drama, and today was no exception. This has been Across the Pitch, over and out.